Welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming tonight. My name is TJ Recupero. I am on the school building committee for the elementary school building project. With me here this evening, Kyle Franceschi of DRA, that's project designer. Of course, Dr. Baeta, you know, superintendent of schools, and Tim Bonfatti of Vertex, the owner's project manager. Also, Eric Rubin is here from the building committee. Joe Buckley, I see in the front. Catherine Weiss, I think I saw. Pat Yanikowski. Of course, Melissa Lynch, I saw also. If I'm missing anyone else, I apologize. Leo Fay and I were just at the Hanson School PTO, so he wasn't feeling well, but he wanted to be here. Welcome you. We wanted to hold this forum at this time. There is a town meeting vote, which we'll explain a little bit coming up in 2 weeks. The purpose of this is sort of a refresher of the project since we last appeared publicly in public forums and, of course, town meeting, also to update you on the status and where we are and where we're going from here. I'm going to kick off with preliminaries, pass off to Dr. Baeta, who's going to have the bulk of the presentation, speaking of the school-specific issues. But for my purposes, wanted to explain where we are right now and where we'll be going in the foreseeable future. We'll touch upon the timeline a little bit towards the end, but we are in a period of an extension from MSBA, Massachusetts School Building Authority. They have dedicated a grant to the town for a new school building. That grant is $47 million, plus or minus, right in that area. They have extended us through the April town election in order to secure the town's portion of funding for the project. And the extension that they granted us was an extraordinary period of time. Typically you have, I think it's 120 days where you have to secure funding. We have from last June now to the first week in April to secure our funding, and that's through no shortage of pleading and lobbying to get that. And the purpose was because the project that we're proposing is, I think you'll hear this and I hope you agree towards the end of this, once we've gone through it all again, is the best solution for the town of Stoughton, both for educational purposes, which are beyond my purview, and you'll hear Dr. Baeta speak of course, but also cost-wise, cost-effectiveness. Since the vote, something happened in town that I thought was very productive, and I support this in the future for capital projects like this. The town manager, we met with him several times, offline and both in our meetings also, and we explained to him why this would be the best solution for the town. Again, cost-wise, also time-wise, because to do a new school or any school solution that would meet the needs of the town would take a significant period of time that we just don't have based on the current status and state of the schools. So the town manager said, okay, people had questions prior to the June vote that did not pass, so he was going to appoint a blue ribbon panel, which he called the Independent Working Group. And Carl, if you can, I think that's the next slide. We'll go into this a little bit more. He went out into the community and pointed, I think in the end it was about 15 people. He sought people who voted no. He tried quite a bit to get some of the more vocal people who voted no to sit on the independent working group, to study the project as it was presented for the June vote, answer some of the open questions that people were presenting to him, and also analyze what the cost would be for some alternative. And he asked people like Dr. Baeta to come in and say, okay, if you can't do this, what is the alternative? And he asked DRA to come in and say, okay, explain to us about this particular building and what would happen if you had to, for example, put modulars onto school buildings and things like that. So the independent working group, they came out with a report. I was on that. I think anybody on that committee will tell you that I was more of a passive member of that group, more of a facilitator, so I could direct someone to the person that would have the information that the committee members were seeking. And in the end, the committee members drafted up a final report. It's about 15 pages, also an executive summary with a chart. The report answers questions that were presented to the committee by the town manager. In addition to that, some other questions that they had asked people to submit. And it also had a chart, which it broke down the costs of this project versus other projects, and we'll speak about that in a little. I'll speak about that in a little more detail towards the end. And in the end, I think if you look at that report, what the result was is that it confirmed, at least in my mind, I can step back and say we did the right thing when we proposed this building, because it was the solution to the problem, the facilities problem this town of Stoughton had in its K-5 education buildings. And I'll end here just to say is that was the school building committee's charge, wasn't to go out and design a building because we want a new building. The charge by MSBA to the school building committee is to go out and find a solution to a facilities problem that the town has. And based on a 2010 facilities master plan that was updated in the mid-2010s and again in 2023, it said that the South School was no longer at its useful life and that the Wilkins School was right behind it. And from that, we studied all aspects of what you would put into a K-5 school building in this town to meet the educational needs and the educational programming for this town. And we came up with the design that was presented last spring in early summer and is again before you tonight. So we have an extension through April. The charge from MSBA was that we could not change the scope of the project in consideration for that extension of time, which isn't to say that we can't change some of the aspects, but we could not change those prior to the vote. We can look at things like building materials and otherwise, but we have to get through the vote first because that was the project that was approved by MSBA. Otherwise, we would have to begin the process all over again, which would be quite a bit of time. But without any further ado, if I could pass on to Dr. Baeta to explain why we're here and where we're at.
Good evening, all. Thanks for coming out. I know it's a chilly night, and hopefully those at home will be listening tonight as well. I'm not one to read slides. You're all able to read, and this will all be available to you on our website as well as soon as possible. Working through Jeff Pickett in our communications office will put this up. We all know the deficiencies of the South School. These deficiencies were outlined very clearly almost 20 years ago as a problem. But really, in 2010 and moving forward, via the decision that we as a town made, I was a town meeting rep at the time, of building a new high school, first and foremost, because basically it touched the entire community. So the south side of town took it for the team, because in retrospect, really, if you look at it, the South School has been a problem. Decisions were also made at that time by school committees and superintendents that the long-term plan to build the school would mean that we would not be asking town meeting for millions of dollars to do upgrades. Now, I say that because we have spent millions of dollars, and I'll use the word facts a lot tonight, because facts are facts and facts still matter. The fact is that the town of Stoughton has put money through the school committee and prior superintendents on our schools. In particular, the Hanson, the Daw, the Gibbons, and yes, the Wilkins, while the Jones, except for the part of the administrative building, and the South have taken, and OMS have taken some of the hits throughout the decades. So as you look at the disrepair, I really start with the first one for me that is a concern and continues to be a concern. It's incredible in 2025 that the town of Stoughton still has a building utilized for its children and families that's not ADA compliant. And in order to make it ADA compliant, the moment you hit a threshold, I believe it's about 30% of the valuation of the building, you have to completely go through that process of ADA and, by the way, fire code as well. And I know this because in my prior district, I did a window project of which the valuation was more than the building, and I had to redo bathrooms and entrance doors as part of that project in order to be ADA compliant. So we have the facts through the building committee's review of a dozen different options on why building this new elementary school on the south side of town does matter long-term to the town, and the commitment that's been made to not build new elementary schools going forward. You'll be seeing a show in the near future where I do a comparison with around town. We did a comparison of the South School and the videos out there about that, and it's very, very basic facts and information. No opportunity or wanting to, say that there's all kinds of things going on. But when you look at doing the same review of the Dawes School, you will see that the Stoughton school committees in the past and superintendents and supportive town meeting and MSBA projects have in fact taken care of its buildings. So the disrepair is significant for any of us that are, I think I just hit something, that are looking at the needs of what we have. And again, you know what they are, you've seen them, and we need to move forward with this. The issue that goes, next slide, the issue that goes along with this that I think is important is this is what you're looking at as the makeup of a current primary education, where left to right you have the South, the K-5, and so on, and then the preschool and the administration building, which is at the Jones. This is our current structure of the district. The plans for the South Elementary School, the Wilkins Elementary School, and the Jones are really simple and have now been discussed at least for the 18 months that I've been superintendent, and I believe there are TV shows from prior school committees and superintendents discussing this. The idea is that the South School would close and we would be opening a new South School and redistricting, at the same time repurposing the Wilkins. Now I want to spend 1 second on this. Town meeting, MSBA projects, and town meeting have put in new bathrooms, new roofs, new windows, new exit doors at the Wilkins Elementary School. It's a solid, older building that will last. It needs to have an upgrade in its heating system. We're actually currently working with our energy consultant to go after some funds and potential to do that upgrade, so that that building would be a preschool going forward. Why a preschool administration? Because the Jones School has no opportunity to be an MSBA project. It would be 100% to the taxpayers because it is a pre-K, and MSBA is about K to 12. It does not, in the regulation, include preschool. So you don't get to go after preschool funds. Second to go with that, as of this year, we have 90 students on a waiting list for preschool. And if you haven't heard, universal preschool is coming. That is the next level of public education in the Commonwealth and nationally. So the Jones School would also be closed and provided to the town for the purposes of the policymakers to decide. But I want to go back to clarify something that the new article brings forward that wasn't in the old article. The new article is $1.25 million less, but it also has language in it that clearly identifies that if there is money within that total appropriation, that we would tear down that building, thereby turning it over to the select board as the policymakers of all of the acreage and land that's there already cleared. That would not be true of the Jones School, but the millions of dollars that need to be put into the Jones School and the fantastic location of the Jones School, I'm sure that there's something that could be become of that area. Most important part, operationally, the Stoughton school system would move from 8 buildings to 6 buildings. That is a major, major positive for a community that's long-term trying to be fiscally responsible. It takes more money every winter to heat the Jones Elementary School than it does the building you are currently in. Now, we know that's because of efficiencies, because of the newest stuff that we have in this building, but that also tells you something about an older building and the kind of money you would have to spend to do that upgrade. So the district for us of a yes vote is very clear. Fiscal responsibility by moving to 6 buildings, one major project left after this would be the O'Donnell Middle School. You would not be planning for new elementary schools in Stoughton. You would potentially be planning for renovations and additions. But your elementary schools that are left behind are solid. They're in great condition. Millions of dollars have been spent on them. And our new capital plan, which will be published sometime for this summer, will show you further capital investments that the school department will recommend for those remaining 6 buildings as we move forward, including the very one that you're in. You don't wait 20 years to start your improvements on a new building. You have to start immediately. And so the configuration would in this idea remain the same. A no vote is difficult for us for a number of different reasons. The most important part of a no vote for us is that we're still looking at closing the south, and we're still looking at now modular classrooms going to at least 3 elementary schools, moving all 308 students from the south school into the Daw, the Gibbons, the Hanson, and to be quite honest, potentially the Wilkins as well, solely because the Wilkins would now be maintained as a K-5, not as a preschool admin building, as a K-5. You still have a Jones headache. Please come by my office for a cup of coffee on a rainy day. I can assure you of the amount of water that comes into that building. And then the second part is that we are maintaining one building to close, the south, and move students into modular classrooms. Modular classrooms are not the way of the future. They are costly to do. There's significant concerns around if they are built connected to the building, having to move to fire code, the entire building, and oh, by the way, ADA compliant within the building. That's millions of dollars that would literally be paid for today for 10 years, zero MSBA money, and 10 to 12 years from now, we're coming back asking for new schools. That absolutely makes no sense to us. And I'll say, if you read any educational, or actually I should say economic articles around modular classrooms in towns, let's just say that the long-term benefit to a community's experiences and ability to move forward aren't there. It will cost you more money in valuation of your homes to go to modular classrooms. Especially, you're not doing modulars because you need 6 modulars. We're taking a look at closing an entire school to do so. It is a poor fiscal decision to look at this. Now, I recognize, as many of you all know, I live in town as well, so my taxes will be part of this. I currently pay like you for the high school and the fire station. So the fact of the matter, we're all going to see that, and we'll have some general numbers for you later. But I really, really think it's important for us to take a look at the last part of this, and I'll leave this with the no vote. When you look at the Jones School and 90 students without a place to go, that means modulars at the Jones School as well. That haven't even been planned out as part of this. So now you have the vicinity of the Jones with modulars, the Daw with modulars, the Gibbons with modulars, the Hanson with modulars. That just doesn't seem like a plan for the future. So the redistricting will take place. Now this is a real interesting dynamic here. There is the what I will call the noise that redistricting won't take place with a no vote. I can assure you that I'm not asking 25 people to spend time, money, and effort on a regular basis to come up with solutions with redistricting, both with a new school and for modulars, because it's a phony baloney statement. It's going to happen. Redistricting is going to happen with a new school. Redistricting is going to happen if you don't build a new school. Those are facts. Those are not debatable. They're not up for discussion. When the library at the Hanson School is in the back of the cafeteria, when the library at the South School is in the hallway, when the library at another elementary school next year is more than likely moving into the back of a cafeteria, that means that we have issues with our buildings. So implementing and opening a new school, our master plan, getting into play with our capital plan, which would allow for us to continuously, again, long-term, not have to look at a brand new elementary school. Accommodating students' needs becomes important for us. Making sure that we're providing those needs is important for us. And I think more importantly of a yes vote is really trying to look at being efficient, effective. Research is clear. It just happened in Stoughton. It's very clear. It takes about 4 to 5 years for the positive effects of new buildings to take place academically. You're sitting in a building that was this year recognized as a Mass DESE, Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, recognition school for the first time ever in its history. You're looking at a school for the first time in its history getting a College Board bronze medal of recognition for participation and increased scores, and you're looking at a top 40% high school in the nation for the first time in the history of Stoughton Public Schools. Now, I believe that goes with excellent teaching and fantastic students, but when you give students the opportunity to do the labs and the work in a facility that gives you 21st century learning, which is where they're going in the real world, that is what our elementary students need as well in this community. A new elementary school that provides for that 21st century learning, that encourages and supports efficiencies and effectiveness district-wide. I'll have Carl come up about the site plan.
Thank you, Joe. Just briefly, I just want to give you a chance to sort of refresh your memory of what the design is for the new school. But as was mentioned, it is virtually the same as was presented last, I guess, June it was, for your vote here. And again, that's because the MSBA has already approved the so-called scope and budget for this project, and we need to maintain that. So just to refresh your memories, the site for the new school is off of Park Street. It's on a parcel of land that the town acquired back in the 1960s for school purposes. The new school will actually occupy just a portion of that site. There is room either for expansion, but moreover for other town uses on the property. So the school isn't so-called monopolizing that whole piece of land. It will have an access point, as we say, off of Park Street. It will have an emergency connection to Haynes Road to the north, just because it's prudent to have 2 ways in and out of a site for emergency, but that second way will be gated on a day-to-day basis. It's not used for vehicular access. The school, as you can see there, sort of has these wings. We refer to it as the pinwheel design because of the way it's configured. And those wings do relate to one of the goals in the education plan of encompassing outdoor space as part of the learning environment. So the playgrounds, the outdoor classrooms, the entrance areas, plazas are all sort of incorporated into the school design with this layout. And then just to show you the footprint of the building, you can see there those wings. So each of those wings houses what we refer to as a grade neighborhood. So on the first floor is the kindergarten and the first grade. As you move up the building, it is a 3-story building. It'd be the second and third, and then fourth and fifth, each in a dedicated wing. And that wing, the neighborhood has not just general ed classrooms, it has special ed spaces, it has some teacher planning space, it has the boys and girls rooms for those areas and so forth. So it breaks down the larger school into smaller little neighborhoods. And then one of the wings of the building is sort of the community wing that has the cafeteria and the gymnasium for convenient and efficient use of that space without opening up the whole building. It can have direct outdoor access. And the fourth wing of the building is the administrative wing that has the principal's office, the nurse's area, and so forth. And in the center of the building, the hub of the building, and again, coming out of this idea came out of the educational plan, is the so-called learning commons. It's kind of the 21st century evolution of the library, but it's more than just a repository for books. It does have project space. It has a STEM lab on the second floor as part of that, and it's a double height space. So it really is the sort of heart of the building. It's part of the main entrance that students will pass through every day coming to the school, whether they arrive by bus or get dropped off by car or ride their bike or whatever, they all enter the front door right by the administration, so there's good supervision and good safety. So we did just want to put those plans out there. Obviously, as was mentioned with a lot of other information, more detailed information is available on the project website, on the school department's website. So thanks. And then I think we wanted to just, if TJ, since you were part of the working group, we handed this out so people hopefully can read it.
Great. I won't spend too much time on this because you have the handout and you can see, but I mentioned earlier the independent working group, and one of their charges was to study the cost of this project versus the cost of other alternatives. The other alternatives for this project, so not commonly known, I don't think. If you just wanted to repair the South School, not add any new space, just bring it up to code, just refinish the woodwork and bring it up to current accessibility standards. That alone, the construction cost alone on that was $35 million, and with soft costs, construction management, design, it was mid 400, I think $46 million is what the independent working group had estimated. So that's just that cost for the South School, and that wasn't a reimbursable project proposed by this town or even foreseen by this town, because we wind up with less school also. We'd have to take from classroom space to widen bathroom space, and toilet room space, I think is the technical term. We'd have to widen doorways, and to make it fully accessible, we'd wind up with less school at almost the same cost, which is counterintuitive when you think about it, or at least I think it would be to the average person. Like, why can't you just fix what you have? Well, because it's just as expensive and you don't get as much. And I think one of the, it's one of the less glamorous, but one of the proud things for myself being on this committee is that we have a very forward-thinking superintendent. My superintendent is planning on doing a building that's going to handle the elementary school, the K through 5 elementary school building issues for the next 30 years plus, for the foreseeable future, so that the kids who are right now in our K through 5 schools won't be paying for a new school themselves when they're old enough to pay property taxes, which I think would be the biggest crime that we could come out of this process would be to do some temporary fix and then saddle them with the cost of something more significant later, because we don't want to take care of this today. The alternative that Dr. Baeta had mentioned also was, if this doesn't pass, we still have a problem, and one of the things the IWG studied was modulars, and to do modulars, a temporary solution as it was proposed and estimated for working discussion purposes, was pretty darn expensive, if not just as expensive also, and not reimbursable by MSBA. So in the end, they went through all these options. On the chart you see behind me and in the handout that DRA gave to you all, and Vertex gave to you all prior to the forum this evening, you'll see that this is the most cost-effective solution that we could come to you with, the taxpayers, to solve our K through 5 elementary issues right now. And all of our buildings right now are plus 50 years old, closer to plus 60 years old, if I'm right. There's an issue. It's not a question between this cost and no cost. It's this cost and some other costs, and the independent working group looked at the other cost component of it and came up with, I think, is the findings in the report. You have the executive summary page before you, but the end result was that this is the most cost-effective solution. It was in my mind prior to that, but I'm glad that another group came in, looked at it, and came to the same conclusion. Which brings us to the issue of cost itself. It's not a cheap project. Nobody on the building committee would ever minimize the cost to the taxpayers. This project, the entire project cost is about $113 million, As I said at the beginning, MSBA will reimburse us approximately $47 million of that. That leaves the town with a maximum cost of approximately $65 million. Now, I'll qualify that by saying something I probably shouldn't have, but there's about $5 million in that project cost that I hope we never have to touch, although I'm sure that we will. That's contingency if we have, cost fluctuations or extras that we need to put in. Best example I can give for that is when we were doing this building here, the school building committee was in the process of, towards the end of that, and the Parkland shooting happened in Florida. So we had extra contingency money, and we at that time said, how are we going to handle school safety in Stoughton now that we're building a building? We ought to do that right now. So we increased the security measures of this building for something like that. Criminal that we should have to discuss that in a building, but it's just the reality of educational building today. And that cost us anywhere, if I remember right, between $500,000 and $750,000. So expenses will come up out of that contingency. In the end, I hope that this is closer to a $60 million project to the taxpayers, because I think everybody on the building committee has full expectation of maintaining as stringent fiscal policies in our spending as we can. But that's a maximum $65 million that we can spend. We're asking for not a dime more, and we won't go back to the taxpayers for a dime more. How that gets paid for is through a borrowing. I had a phone call today with the town manager and the town accountant who explained that we're trying to get updated numbers as of today. The last time they were estimated was back in April, where the town's borrowing advisor, Hilltop Securities is the name of the firm. They ran the numbers, and based on the project cost and the then current borrowing rates, they estimated that it would cost the taxpayers 61 cents per $1,000 of property value. So if you own a $400,000 home, this will cost you closer to $240,000, $240 extra per year. If you own a $500,000 home, it would cost you $305. I think it comes to per year extra. It's based on the value of your home, and I explain it that way because the people who will be most affected by this are those who are probably have a home valued under the average, and they would be paying less than we would estimate based on an average value. So I don't want to throw in an average value. I'd be happy to, but if you own an average home, you'll be paying somewhere in the range of $300 per year extra. Hopefully less, because hopefully we can control the costs. Also, the town manager has spoken, and the select board has, I think, taken a vote about taking the surplus schools, the South School property and the Jones School properties, and potentially selling those and applying the proceeds towards this borrowing. That would, of course, bring the cost to the taxpayer down significantly. So all hands on deck. Everybody's trying to make this as manageable. The other thing that I thought was interesting and new to me, might be new to people on our project team, is that the Commonwealth of Massachusetts now has, if not approved, is at least attempting to authorize municipalities to borrow for 40-year periods as opposed to 20 or 30. So this building was financed over a 30-year period. If you could borrow the $65 million plus or minus for the elementary school we're going to do, and you could spread that over a 40-year period, although I ought not be around by then. By the time that's paid off, that would certainly be more palatable to the taxpayers of this town. I would support that, but it's a policy question for the select board at the time. I'll point out one other thing that I think is important, significant. If you could just flip back one just quickly. I threw you a curveball, Carl. So the average home in Stoughton right now is $550,000. That's the average home. Some are more, some are less, of course. When we did this school in 2016 and we brought it to town meeting, we had a similar slide, an almost identical slide, and the average of home value in 2016 was $314,000. So over this less than 10-year period since we've done that project, 8 years since we did this project, the average home price has increased $200,000. And our tax rates have maintained steady along that same period of time. Also, the portion that you pay of your income and of your property values towards your property taxes has gone down over the last several years, 6 years, I think. It's been on a downward trend. And what that tells me is that the people in this town who are making policy on the financial decisions of the town are making solid decisions where the average taxpayer is making more out of their homes and keeping more of it as opposed to paying. Nobody minimizes the taxes people pay, but DOR numbers will tell you that you're keeping a bigger portion of it than you were back in 2016 when we did this school, and you've made $200,000 in equity in your home since then. That said, there are people with needs in this town, and nobody minimizes that either. We, on this project, on the high school project, we did pretty extensive outreach to seniors, particularly also to anybody who would have any need for assistance with paying their taxes. And I'm very pleased that actually on the town side, in the town, I think at the direction of the town manager, they've taken the steps of outreach to the seniors through the Council on Aging, also through the assessor's office, to let people know that there are programs available for tax relief. There is, for everybody 65 and older, there is what's called the circuit breaker tax credit, where you file a Schedule CB, I think it is, on your state taxes, and you're entitled to an automatic, I don't think it's needs-based, but it's an automatic tax credit. There are needs-based tax credits for seniors. There are also needs-based taxpayers for people who have disabilities, who are blind, for veterans, all of which are, the information for all of those is available either through the Council on Aging. The numbers should be on the handouts. If not, I have them and I can give them to you before we leave. There they are there. Also in the assessor's office, I know that they have online, you can pull up, they have a sheet that answers questions on how to obtain tax relief, how to apply, and the different programs that may be available. I don't want to go on too much longer because I want to get to questions, but this is the sheet, actually, the one that you just saw that the assessor's office publishes. So the next steps, this is where we're at. So we had an extension granted by MSBA, unprecedented extension through April, that would allow us to secure the town's portion of funding. Because of the debt exclusion vote in June, or the result of the debt exclusion vote, there will be another town meeting on February 3rd to authorize the appropriation again. Statute says that you have, I think it's 100 days from the date of town meeting to approve through a debt exclusion. Otherwise, you have to file and have another appropriation approved. So that's what we're doing in February. That will come after the February town meeting. That will go to the voters on April 8th. After that successful vote, and I have no doubt we'll be successful this time because there are so many people who are vested in this project, interested in it passing, and see the merits of it, we then start. We'll spend the next year going through. DRA will finalize plans. We'll go through permitting. It has to go to the planning board. It has to go to the Conservation Commission, these local boards for approvals. The school would open, I think we're still targeted for fall 2028. Nope, that's fine. And just by comparison, this was another issue that the working group looked into, that the timeline on the different options if we had some other options. So if it fails and the town wanted to go back into the MSBA program and apply for a grant for a different school project, I don't think there's no way you could find a better project for this town that would be more cost effective. No way. This is a dynamite school, and I'm very proud of it. I could talk your ear off about it, but If that's what the voters say, what they'll do is they'll reapply to MSBA. The average to get back into the MSBA project is around 5 years. After you go through the feasibility study, go through the approval period, and you finally have a school, you're probably looking between 8 to 10 years. So that's to do a new school. If we don't do this one and we still wanted to do a new school, would be probably an 8 to 10 year proposition. To do a temporary fix, we're still looking at a fix that will only last us 10 years. That would be modulars or some sort of repair modular combination. And in the end, this solves our problem. It solves it in the shortest time period in the most cost-effective way, where we're not passing off that cost to a new generation. And also, I mean, just it makes sense for the sole purpose that if we have to build 2 elementary schools in a 5 to 10 year window, we also lose the benefit of certain economies of scale. We can do 1 cafeteria as opposed to 2. We can do 1 gymnasium as opposed to 2. And we can fit a maximum of 600 students in 1 building for right now what is a cost that I think is manageable to the town. And just for perspective, this building here and the number of students that were assigned to it by MSBA, there's an adjacent town that is building a school that is just about the same square footage, has just about the same enrollment. It's not a high school, and it's about double what we spent. So costs aren't going down, costs are going up. In 2021, the median price of building a school in Massachusetts was $574. Today, the median price per square foot to build a school in Massachusetts is over $830. It's just building a school in Massachusetts is going up, it's not going down. If we push this off, it will be more expensive, not less. Thank you for your time. We welcome any questions. I don't want to go on any further. Thank you again. And there are microphones in the aisles, and if anybody needs assistance, we can certainly bring one to you. But we welcome any questions you have.
Hi, I'm Kristen Barry. I live in Stoughton in the South School District. Thank you guys for all of this. This was super helpful, great information. One of the questions I have is really pertaining to targeting people who didn't vote the last time, as well as maybe some of the people who are on the fence. I think this information is fantastic, but how can we help get more information out there to people in the community to make sure that more of those yes votes actually show up?
I haven't researched the whole thing, but when you look at where the voters came from and the precincts and the outcome, you can definitely see that there are folks who, firmly believe that this was going to go through, no questions asked, didn't vote. Those are people that I've seen when I'm out to dinner in town or, walking the dog and all that just simply say, I never thought that Stoughton would vote no for schools. So they didn't vote. Second, there is a special interest. And the special interest is I've been going to X school for generations since the 1950s and 60s. My child goes there now. Why would I want to move them? I find that one to be an interesting one. I think my biggest issue is when you look at taxation, the Commonwealth is probably one of the least transparent states in the nation. And what I mean by that is everybody just got their tax bills. You have an assessment, and you have a tax bill. How much is your fire department costing you on your tax bill? Nothing on there. How much is the high school costing you? Nothing on your bill. It's a lump sum. We're not allowed in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts to itemize that. Because I think if you itemized it, and people saw, okay, my taxes are going up 2.5% on my assessed value, not on top of the fire station, not on top of the new high school, not on top of the new elementary school, some people would say, you know what, for the next 30 years I got to pay for this. I'm okay with it. I get it. But we don't do that in Massachusetts. Just go home and look at your tax bill. There's nothing in there. But yet your water and trash bill is itemized. That's not a Stoughton problem, by the way. That's a Commonwealth problem. I think the other part is that folks don't understand that a couple of folks who said, I'm not sure I want to vote for this because of the lack of guarantees. The money for this project from the MSBA has been put aside for the town of Stoughton. It wasn't voted this year. It's not going to be revoted. It's already voted. They didn't move the line on this project. We came down 1.25 million. They didn't move. That money comes from 1 penny out of the 6.25 tax that you pay on everything that you purchase. That money is guaranteed by statute to have to go into the MSBA account. It's been going on since the 90s, got changed in the early 2000s. Mr. Buckley is down here, who at one time was a member of the MSBA as an employee, knows that they are the most conservative group. They have changed the numbers. When I was building a project in another community, literally they changed the amount of technology reimbursement, became less. The size of this very auditorium was dictated by the MSBA. Remember that fight about wanting to make it our own, and they said no. Now they've changed their mind now. Now they say if you want it, you can do it, but you're not getting a penny more than the 800 seats that are in this building. You want to build it for 1,000, you're going to have to pay the 2. But they went through a time period where they said, absolutely not. This is your grant, this is what you're getting, live with it, don't like it. By the way, we're at 1,112 students in this building, made for 1,080, projected to be 1,300 by 2034. 1,300 students for a building built for 1,080. So again, that's an MSBA qualification in the enrollment. They're very conservative in their enrollment. They're going to be and are for this project as conservative. So I think it's the facts and the straightforward information to folks to not be scared of the misinformation. The biggest piece of misinformation was the signs just simply said no taxes. I don't know anybody in this room right now who says, please tax me more. It was about a project for schools that's fiscally responsible and fiscally responsible long-term. Many of us in this room will never see, in my case, paying 30 years on this building. Somebody else will be paying it because I'll be gone by then more than likely. Hopefully not. But at the end of the day, it was just a very simple. My old man used to say all the time, as a dad, the only mistake I made is I said no too much. As a dad, I hope you say yes more often. I really think that folks who voted no out of really just being scared about what this means, and not exactly that it's fiscally prudent to go this route. Anybody remember the fire station cost and what it ended up being and what it was? How about this building, which came in under budget? We're a community. I can tell you right now, there's at least 3 to 4 elected folks in town, some of them town meeting members, that have been saying no to new building projects in this town since the 1980s, or at least in the 1990s when I was a town meeting member. It's spend now, spend later, but you're going to spend.
Can I also add, and I was remiss in saying this, so it's right in front of me and right behind me. You can go to the school department website, stoughtonschools.org. This little thing here, it's little on your screen, but it's probably about 2 feet wide. Up here is one of those little, what do they call those? QR codes that will bring you, Melissa's laughing at me. You can bring, that will bring you to the project website, and you can also email us. It's newelementaryschool@stoughtonschools.org. There's also an advocacy group that we have no affiliation with. They're separate and apart from us, but that's voteyesstoughton.com, and they're active in the community trying to support the school building committee's work, and I'm sure they'd be happy to answer any questions. And if you wanted to get involved, I'm sure they would love to talk to you. But I think that's voteyesstoughton.com, if I'm right. But this is our website, stoughtonschools.org, and the elementary school building has its own separate web page. Also social media. I know Jeffrey Pickett has been very active, posting everything about the project on social media.
You teed up my question perfectly. So as a member of the Vote Yes committee, we did quite a bit prior to the June election to try to get the word out to the town. We are planning on doing that again, but I'd like to ask what the school committee will be doing this time around, because that's a group that we didn't get a lot of support from originally. How are we getting the message out to more families in town to get them to the polls? Again, I think we did hear a lot of like, oh, I just didn't show up because of X, Y, and Z. Like, how do we make sure that everyone knows what's happening? Again, whether that's from you, Dr. Bayeda, and your group or the school committee, we'd love to understand.
Yeah, so there's a little bit of a catch-22 in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts around elected officials and participation in elections, which, interestingly enough, wasn't necessarily played evenly by all sides. I'll leave it at that. So as a former school committee member myself, school committees as elected personnel can speak to the project. They have to be very careful about donating money and all of that stuff. I do believe that our current school committee has attempted in many different ways to communicate support, but it really comes down to, I think, a couple of different things. As an appointed official, I have a very interesting role because this is the first time where I'm also a taxpayer. So I have to be very careful about what I do and say. So after hours on my own social media, I can do that. I'm not on social media really, so you have to be very careful. You can't use, for example, anything that's owned by the school department. Folks like the school committee, as elected officials, they have an email that actually belongs to their role on the school committee. They have to be very careful about using that. They can use their private email as an example. The other part that is typical is the reason why you want a third party to really take the lead is because that's a party that is working the work of the job of the recommendation that's going forward. So the successful areas in the towns that have been successful, including Stoughton, have had powerful, if you will, PACs that come forward and really sell it. So district-wide, easiest building to build in most communities is your high school. Your second is then your middle schools, and then it's the elementary schools. You know, I live on the north side of town, I live on the east side of town. Why should I pay for something on the south side of town? I'm not going to see any, quote, direct benefit from it. And so that's the reason why PACs become so important, because the idea is that a solid PAC would have, let's say we have 8 precincts, I would recommend 3 to 5 people for every precinct. That's part of that working group. And that's not a knock, by the way. I have spent time privately with the PAC group, as you know. But the idea is that you are really saying what is the community benefit. And that's one reason. I think the last part for me that's above and beyond is I have a very ethical school committee, one that believes in the rule of law and believes that they're not going to try to do certain things that make the school system look bad. That's not always true. I can tell you this after 16 years on the job. But they stick to that, and I see it in the questions that they ask, in their concern for making sure they don't cross that line, because they don't want it to come back to the school system, right? There are, as you know, bright folks who are highly compensated as school committee members, because it's a huge salary that they get for that work, as a couple of us know that used to be school committee members. But they're ethical. They're ethical people who want to stay to make sure that what they're saying and doing is as straightforward and on the button as possible, so that the school committee cannot be used as a thorn on the side of why somebody's going to vote yes or no on a project.
This will be okay. Good evening, everybody. My name is Paul Benoit. I just want to say that I am a proud resident of Stoughton now I've been living here for almost 17 years. 2 of my children do attend the Stoughton Public Schools. My daughter is in 8th grade at the O'Donnell School, and my son is in 4th grade at the Daw School. First off, I want to say I really appreciate this presentation, because one of the things that has taught me is that a no vote is not an option. This is not an option. Having children be in modular classrooms is not an option. I am an educator myself, and previous towns. I have taught in modular classrooms, and it is a nightmare. It is an absolute nightmare. This is not a place where children can be proud to be in a learning environment like that. So I just want to say that, and I also want to say, how voting is important too, because I was one of those people who did not vote because I thought, oh, this is a slam dunk. People are going to go for it. No, you have to get out and vote. And I think I'm definitely going to be someone who's going to be talking to my neighbors and trying to get them out there to go to vote. But I guess my question to you all, I'm trying to look for like a good, maybe like a good flashcard answer to any of my neighbors who say, I don't have any kids in this town. Why should I care? Why should I care? My property taxes are going up. Why should I care about putting in a new school if I have any kids to this town? So if I can get maybe like a good little flashcard answer, I would appreciate that. Thank you.
I'm gonna give my own perspective, and then Joe, if you could add in, because maybe I look at this uniquely. Peter, you and I talked about this. Peter Murphy and I talked about this. Is that I mentioned a little while earlier that property values went up since we did this high school about $200,000 over this last 8 years. The high school at that time was under threat of losing its accreditation. Do you think that you would have seen an increase of $200,000 in your property values between then and now if we didn't do that high school? So putting it into perspective, and Peter did this beautifully the other night. Let's say you have the average house and you're paying $300 per year and you spread that over 10 years. That's a $3,000 additional cost that you'll bear, sure. But if we didn't do that high school and your property was devalued by $30,000, you will have lost 10 times the same amount for not doing that project as you have paid to maintain the value of that property that you've invested your entire life in. Two things you do is you build a family and you settle in a home in this country. And the most valuable asset you have to protect it. Now, if you could tell me that we can have a crappy South School and a bunch of modulars at all of our elementary schools and maintain your property values over a 10-year period for $3,000, then I'll engage in that discussion. Conversely, you can't do the same, and I've looked every which way possible in all sorts of academic studies and journals. You can't say that when you build a new school in any town, anywhere, that your property values will go up. You can say when you let your schools deteriorate, property values go down. You can absolutely say that. So what you're investing for that $300 per year that you'll pay, it's tough to do, but you have to consider the alternative is that you could be losing something very much more in value in something that you put your entire life in establishing. That's what we're selling here, and I hate to put it in those terms, but it really is important to do that because you put it in an IRA, you put it in a mutual fund, you hope that it appreciates value every year. Some years it does, some years it doesn't. You can't see the catastrophes along the way. We can. We know the catastrophe along the way. We know that the South School at some point in the very near future will be beyond its useful life, after which the alternatives are putting modulars at schools or sitting around and waiting in the MSBA grant program application process for another 5 years on average for another school we won't see for probably another 8 to 10 years on average. To address this now it's horrible to think this way, but is saving us money, saving the average taxpayer money. It sounds counterintuitive, but it's very real in real dollars, and that's value that people pass on to their children, they use for retirement, they use for recreational purpose, whatever. It's their money. And I hope that people see it that way, because the alternative is something much, much worse. I hope that addressed it, but
my biggest target for anyone who didn't vote is stick to the facts. Just stick to the facts. Don't stick to TV shows. Don't stick to social media. Don't listen to any of that, because the misinformation is real. Number one, where do you get the facts? You have a bunch of taxpayers that live in this town who have taken time and effort out of their lives for the last 2+ years by simply going to the QR code, by going to the district website. All that's there is factual pieces of information about the project cost. For example, how come you only did the new school, you didn't look at anything else? We looked at 13 different areas, 13 different options. There's an MSBA letter on the website. It's actually also been provided to the independent working group that clearly articulates a letter back from the MSBA. Thank you for viewing. And it lists all the things that the building committee did and all the potential costs and where it would be built and why not the reno and why a reno addition and can you do it and so on and so on. It's all there on a 6-page document with the final part of it saying, and we agree with you after looking at this, that this is the best fiscally and educational plan for the town of Stoughton. From a conservative MSBA group that does not want to give towns money, but is willing to give you, the taxpayers of Stoughton, $47 million. And what we're saying is we don't want $47 million.
Sorry, I refuse to stoop to the microphone. Chris Shannon, 47 Schofield Drive in Stoughton. To your question, I just had an additional thought. It's something that no one has raised yet. But in my background in workforce development and partnering with economic development organizations, new schools are good for business. So if you're trying to attract businesses to Stoughton, you're trying to attract jobs to Stoughton, they want to come to towns and cities that have invested in the infrastructure so that their potential employees have great places to live, great schools to enjoy, great culture to enjoy, et cetera. So that would be my byline. I think that's a very strong argument to give someone who obviously does not have children and doesn't have any direct reason to invest in schools. So that's one thing. I did have a question I wanted to bring forward, if that's okay. You've mentioned modular classrooms if we do not build the South School. I've also heard that we may still need modular classrooms. Can you differentiate between the potential costs of modulars that would replace the South School versus ones we would need temporarily for to accommodate student enrollment?
Could do a Sinatra for you. So great point, right? So to connect to the comment about businesses and people wanting to move into Stoughton. We are a destination, folks. Just look at the enrollment increase that we're going through in the home sales and where people are wanting to rent and buy. We're averaging an increase of 51 students a year of just people moving into town, and that's with a churn. In other words, there are people moving out and sell and go elsewhere because of XYZ. So we have a perfect storm going on of enrollment. So what would happen in those, what I would call very temporary modulus types, depending on the number, I just saw a school district that for a temporary situation was $3 million. And I saw, and ours are projected to be somewhere around 25 million, now probably going closer to 30 million, because if it is considered that a connection to the school, I don't want to build a modular classroom that's not connected to the building. I'm concerned about the winter, and I'm sure as heck concerned with safety, which is really, at the end of the day, the number one responsibility of the superintendent of schools, the safety of our kids and our staff within the working day buildings. So I believe it'd be more than that, and we wouldn't know that until you get a design and you go through that entire process. But then remember that those would be short-term. And that's the concern, is that literally 10 years, 12 years down the road, you'd be coming right back to town meeting talking about the same problem. And piggyback to that, we built 5 elementary schools in Stoughton in 17 years. Think about that. Your grandparents or parents supported, in most cases, grandparents supported 5 elementary schools in 17 years because of the growth of the town. What we're doing right now is, and this is a very good idea, we built the high school. Yes, we're coming in right now with this project. We know what the next project is. Hopefully, as the high school is coming off, the middle school is coming on. It does mean that we're going to have to spend some money in between there on the middle school. However, you're done. You're done. You're looking at renovation addition projects down the line. As somebody who's done that, that's a whole different, that's not even close to these type of numbers when you're doing that. So the cost benefit to us is no modular classrooms, potentially temporary simply because of the increase in enrollment if it continues down that road. And then lastly, building for the future is to go with a 50 million, with a 50-year project. I don't know if that addresses the question.
Good evening. Peter Murphy, Precinct 2, town meeting rep, also on the planning board. And yes, TJ and I did have a conversation about that, putting value back into your property. One of the questions that I had, and I went to the town clerk's webpage to pull up the June 11th election. Where did the votes come from? Where did the yes votes? Where did the no votes come from? And what happens is Precinct 3 is where the South School is. They had a strong vote there in favor of the replacing the school. The vote was 527 yes, 363 no. Now what happens is, as you go through the numbers, and I'm not going to go through the numbers now, but anyone can go to the town clerk's office and see the numbers. I'm going to say the west side of 138, those were all no votes because it's not in their backyard. But what they don't realize, when you start looking at the schools, and they're going to start putting modular buildings there. Again, if you're selling your house within the next 10 years, 20 years, those modulars are still going to be there because they haven't built anything. Again, it gets back to the value of your property and your resale value. And I think it's going to hurt you in the long run. Again, take your own house. You've got to put a new roof on it. You have to redo the driveway. You have to do siding. You have to paint it. Whatever. That's an investment in your property. You have to keep up with it. Otherwise, you're going to lose value. And someone's going to, again, they have the buy the ugly houses. They'll come in and they'll buy it, throw a little lipstick on it, and they'll make some money. But you won't get the full value of your property because they're going to look at the school systems and say, this town doesn't support it. Thank you. Sure.
Good evening, Peter Banis, Precinct 2. I have quite a lot to say, which I usually do anyway, as you know, Superintendent Baeta. I originally attended the first presentation. There was probably maybe 100 people here. Deborah Levitz, the principal of the West School, got up and spoke, and mentioned the fact that you're going to lose the community school. And I know Superintendent Baeta and I have spoken about you are going to redistrict no matter what, and I respect that you have to do that. And I guess there's a committee set up because I looked on the website, and I didn't really get the different people's names yet. But the reason that the no vote happened was because people were concerned. They were concerned about their taxes. On the on the packet that was sent out to the town meeting members, and I think if you read through it, there's certainly a lot of wonderful points made. One of my original things when I asked Superintendent Byetta about Brockton built 5 schools in like 8 years or something. He informed me that the MSBA changed 2016. I think you told me they changed. They don't go for the model schools anymore. They don't want, an elementary school. We have an email from the MSBA dated October of 23, and it says that there were 6 schools that were passed. So I'm assuming they put it in probably long before 2023. They probably put it in before 2016. That's how it got approved. And you let me know that they weren't going to approve that anymore. One of the points I had spoken. Yep. Go ahead.
Schools, those are 6 more options for model schools that people that were added to. I saw that email that you're referring to.
They were approved.
But nobody's done a model school, is the point.
Well, the point was
that was Dr. Bayeda's point. Nobody has done a model school project since
2016, I think you told me.
Yeah, I think that still stands, but they have a list of schools that you can choose from. It's just nobody's used them. They've added 6 new options for it. Still, nobody has done a new model school. Just to clarify the email that you're looking at.
Okay, but that's when I believe I said to you that it seemed like the MSBA has too much power because they're holding the money in front of you, trying to explain to you, we're doing you a big favor. And I brought up the point to you at one of the meetings at the South School. That and when I got out of high school, I was the sports director for the summer program for 1970 and 71. There's a huge ball field up there. When I brought that issue to Mr. Calter, he said, well, there's something that you can't do it because there's some sort of a restriction. Well, I don't think we ever really looked at that possibility. One of the points in the packet, it says in number 7, I believe it is, and this is, I went through this pretty thoroughly, and I just had my left knee replaced a week ago, Monday. Is it possible to build a new elementary school for $30 million? And I see that this was the issue that it wasn't never presented. I understand that because it didn't seem like that was an option, if I would be correct. And then it says, how would you school to the residents who express the school is too extravagant of a design, right? One of the issues about this project, the road from Park Street all the way in was a huge amount of money, okay? And we never even considered, I don't think, coming in from Ash Street, that was never even a consideration. The entrance now is on Ash Street.
It doesn't have front, they're not connected parcels, Peter. There's privately owned land between the school parcel that was acquired for school purposes in the 60s and the South School building. There's privately owned land between those that we weren't able to acquire. We tried, but weren't able to.
Maggie Rizzi, during the building committee for the public safety building committee, they couldn't get anything done because of the issue of the school owning the land. That was part of the issue. But anyway, the only thing I wanted to say, I sent a letter to Mr. Calter on email this morning, all right, and I asked him, I said, good morning, just a follow-up of my citizens' comments of the select board earlier in January. The taxpayers will have a big decision on the upcoming vote for the South School project. The major concern for the taxpayers is affordability of the presented project. We need accurate information for the taxpayers to review. The cost of 400 Prospect Street has never been presented. I have been requesting details for the cost of that project since it was started. This budget information is a major impact on the taxpayers and the burden for them.
That's the fire station project?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I understand when we set up this, whatever the letters are, the committee, I was asked to be on that committee, and I was told that I voted no. But I didn't vote no, I voted yes. But then I changed my mind. I changed my mind because we never had an option of anything that, other than what was presented. So that's the reason I did that. All I want to say is that this last thing, and I'm sorry that I'm taking more time than I'm supposed to.
No, go ahead.
Social media has been extremely active in disparaging the no voters, and the taxpayers did speak. And Mr. Byetta even said to me, Superintendent Byetta said, 55% to 45% is pretty impactful. Right? So now we set up this new committee. They did a fantastic job of getting the people out. They got a fantastic job of getting the town meeting to let's put it on the ballot. Okay? I'm not against the concept that I originally saw was that's why I said yes. But when you look at the taxpayer and the impact on the people that don't have the children, I think that's a major issue. Whether you think the no voters, I don't think they're going to be changing their mind. The numbers that Peter Murphy just gave, that's where the big battle is going to come. And it's probably going to, not a battle, maybe I shouldn't call it a battle, but next week on February 3rd, there should be a really nice discussion back and forth on there are no other options. We won't have a school for 8 years probably, right? 10 years. And that's obviously a concern. Here's the final thing. Superintendent Byetta, we talked, and I understand. I went to the Jones School, okay? The officers are there because the MSBA would not allow the officers to be at the high school, along with the fact that the auditorium is smaller, and that we're going to have another article to spend money that we shouldn't have had to spend, I don't think, about the stage or the lights or whatever the heck it was. But the main thing is, it became such a distressful and just a nasty thing, the way the social media. I'm not on Facebook, because what it's done, it's caused this divided community, and you should be able to have a conversation in politics, but we know that we can't, right? So anyway, I'm not advocating make sure you vote no, make sure you vote no, but it's going to be interesting to see what happens on February 3rd when we talk about this. Thank you very much.
No, I agree. Just to correct you, Peter, the MSBA didn't tell us to put the district offices one place or the other. That was the least expensive option in the Jones School. But, sure.
So, Peter, to your comments, a couple of different things. So I think, since I came in 23 and prior to me coming in, some of these decisions were already going down a road. For all transparency, I sat on a committee that actually believed at one time that we could build an elementary school and a public safety building on the same site. I was in the minority in that. By the way, the number that I received at the time, and I should push it out at some point, for a public safety building was roughly another $5 to $7 million more than what we paid for one fire station. But I must have been wrong on that one as well. We are paying for the sins of the past. You and I have a long history together. I took over for you on the school committee, if you remember. We've been town meeting colleagues and friends for, it's got to be pushing 30 years. And the fact is, we are paying for decades of kicking the can. We love to kick the can. If it was a horse, we've killed it 20 times, and it came back to life, and we killed it again. That's what we do. I was a town meeting rep for forever. I left town meeting because I was disgusted with it. To be quite honest, I'll leave it at that. The misinformation on this project starts with this comment. The idea that the town of Stoughton's children, taxpayers, parents, can't have the best damn elementary school in the Commonwealth. I am so ticked off about the Taj Mahal comment, because I spoke at town meeting right down here in the old building. I spoke in favor of the new high school. The person who spoke before me is the same person that calls this elementary school the Taj Mahal, that he called the high school a Taj Mahal. So at the end of the day, we want to kick the can. I'm not going to see a single benefit of the South Elementary School. I have not seen, will not see a single benefit of the high school as a parent. Which leads me to the last part. The reason why we have so much hatred is because we've allowed for the sense of community to not be the core of the discussion.
Absolutely,
We've made it special interest.
absolutely.
And so we now have the continuation of feeding misinformation through social media. I totally agree with you. Both sides throw all kinds of stuff that shouldn't be thrown at folks. I have friends on the no side. And we go at it. And we still go out and have a cold drink together and a cup of coffee. And I wish them nothing but good health. I'm able to
get
do
you.
that. But the hatred, the feeling on this side of the aisle, as your new superintendent but lives in town, is there's a significant hate for public education in Stoughton from a very vocal minority. And I'll say that to town meeting. There are town meeting reps who despise public education and what we stand for. Just look at how they vote.
The dynamic of Stoughton certainly has changed, there's no question. And when you look at the fact that the Jones School property is going to get sold, okay, and we're going to build apartments, okay. When people develop, they develop to make money. Look how long we had to wait to get the hole in the ground filled. Finally, and you have to give Mr. Calder credit for that taking place. And I know I spoke with you on the original Public Safety Building Committee when I questioned you and said, why couldn't we come to an agreement? It came close, but again, it became the typical kick the can down the road. No one wanted to push for anything, and now we're stuck with this dilemma. So again, I think it's going to be interesting to find out the discussion on February 3rd. The misinformation thing is, you don't know who to believe. That's basically what it comes down to.
So I'll leave you with this, because I know folks want to get home and it's cold, but I'll leave you with this. If I had to guess where we're going, if the no vote succeeds, we move to modulars. And then you're going to have a real difficult discussion about not building a middle school, but actually building your first K-8 school. I'm not sure that that's what we want to do as a community,
Well,
because we're not going to be able to afford that.
you were on committee when they put those modulars in, I believe, right?
I was
At the-
just
at the
coming
middle-
on.
At the middle
Correct.
school, right.
Yes.
And that, again, you go back, it's past history. The people in charge, and there was no long-term thought. And when you came in, I told you, you at least came forth and said, we've never been fiscally responsible. There's never been any kind of a plan, a fiscal plan by the schools. And I give you credit for realizing, and you set this thing up to try to make this happen. So
Well, I could tell you that the last school committee and the current school committee had a lot to do with that with my predecessor, that they took votes to say, we want to have 6 schools, not 8. We want to take 2 schools off. We want to build a new school. We will not ask for new elementary schools. Our last big project is OMS, and really establishes that for the next 25 to 40 years, you don't have new elementary projects and secondary projects within the town of Stoughton, which is what the taxpayers did when they built 5 elementary schools in 17 years.
Anyway, as I made up when I was vocal against the fire station project, which is probably the biggest fiscal scandal in Stoughton history, but I'll say that publicly because it is, okay? But the fact is, Stoughton politics is like oldies 103. The hits just keep on coming. Good night. Am I right?
Looks like we have one more question. Two more questions.
Sounds good. Appreciate it. Adam Michaels, my daughter is in Hanson School. My son is in the high school. I have no personal benefit. Maybe my property value will go up a little bit, this really more South School. My yes vote comes from my daughter, who visited the South School during a pen pal exchange between Hanson and South. She came home in tears, saying that she doesn't understand why her friends go to a school that was run down, that there were alleys that they couldn't walk through. I haven't been to the school myself, but I imagine that. So my yes vote is coming from a 4th grader, 3rd grader at the time, who doesn't need to go back into the school, but is looking out for her friends and her friends' brothers and sisters who are younger. So I think the town the no's, the yes. We talked about property values. We talked about fiscal responsibility. We need to also talk about the responsibility to the children and get past a couple $100 on property value, but think more for the future. That's where I am. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name's Joanne O'Reilly, Precinct 2, and I want to know where in Massachusetts is this model school? I want to know where is this, where can we go find it and actually see it?
You and I had the same discussion.
Yeah, and I didn't get an answer.
Well, I answered, this is a custom-designed school for Stoughton. It's not a model school.
Okay, but where is it? So we can go see it. It's nowhere? It's nowhere.
Nowhere. Nobody else has built this school.
Okay, so that's why I can't understand why we can't. We all want a school. I think all of us do. It's very important that we do this. But this is a very outstanding model. It's actually crazy looking, to be honest. And there's so many other models, just the other model schools that can be utilized. That's what I just, that's what I don't understand. Right. Sorry.
No, not at all.
It has nothing to even to do with, well, it does increase taxes, it will. So, but, and I'm a senior too, you know, I've you know, like, so, but I'm just looking at that, and it's just very odd looking. And I want, actually, I'm 100% for education, but in a regular model school, they're going to get the same education as in that model school. They will.
So can I?
I mean, I went to schools in Boston, you know, like in these really.
When you say model school, though,
that.
I have to clarify the term model school.
Yeah.
That's an MSBA term. That means you go to a list of schools that they have, and you can pull plans out of there and ask them if you can use those particular plans for your district.
Yes.
So this particular school is not on the list of model schools. If your question is where can you go to see this same design elsewhere, it hasn't. Every school is designed for a specific educational program in a specific town.
Okay.
So that's why the term, I just want to be clear, the term model school is specific to MSBA.
Okay, that specific building up there.
We don't have it, but also I think Carl Franceschi can tell you this. This school was actually designed to maximize our reimbursable space and incorporate our educational program better than some other community school who has some other design.
Even just to get a builder to build that school is going to be a major project for.
No,
it's a major project. I mean, so this is going to be a brand new model school for some builder to come in to Stoughton and build it. And you can get mad at me. That's okay. Doesn't matter.
I'm not going to get mad at you.
That's okay.
No, I've been yelled at a lot. I've been yelled at a lot, but I haven't done much of the yelling. I respect folks having different views, and clearly, especially anyone who is really just worried about a lot of the things you just said. So, I ask you to do one thing tonight, if you could, or in the next few days. I want you to read. If you don't have it, I'll get it to you. Just email me. I'll get you a hard copy if you'd like. I want you to read the educational plan for the new elementary school. Just read it as if you were entertaining yourself with a new book, and ask the questions that I think you will have, which is, why do we have an educational plan that is so significant to Stoughton? It has to do with a number of things. One, a growing population in special education. We have no elementary school that was built in Stoughton post-IDEA, which is the federal law on special education. What does that mean? That means that we're going to have spaces that are targeted, and we had to make the educational plan, and MSBA agreed a part of this, because we said we want a school where our thriving artistic program of students can really make a difference. So that's one. Two, our biggest increase of student population within that plan are English language learners. We're over 700 ELL students. That's an increase of over 400 since 2021. That's our demographic shift that we have. Three, we looked at things like STEM development. We took a look at how to make the building accessible to the public. We took a look at how to make the building accessible for student presentations. We took a look at access for safety. We took we created secondary entrances for things like voting, which has never happened at the South School. That is all part of the educational plan. We decided to build a bigger gym than traditional for an elementary school simply because we know that our activity organizations in town are looking for a bigger space. This is our taxpayers, not the private groups. That is all encompassing in an 80-page educational plan. And if you read that, it's going to lead to further questions. The reason why model schools are not happening is because they're not happening. People aren't saying, give me that model school. They're just not happening. And the reason is people are building according to the need of their town. This is also the biggest elementary school we're going to have in town. Our biggest currently is just over 400. This will be an elementary school with 600. And then the last part that I think is important is that it belongs on the south side of school because that makes us operationally more efficient in terms of transportation of kids and specialized programs. So I would ask you to take a look at that as part of the decision making that you're making, recognizing that I understand how you're voting.
And I just want to say, but I think of a child just trying to like where to go to. I mean, this young child, fifth grade's 10-year-old, this fifth grade's 10 or 11-year-old, I think, to even make a decision of where to go, like we got to think in their young minds. Even when I went to high school, like I went from Boston to here to Stoughton High, and I was so confused. But that child who's only 11 or under under 11 to decide where to go to school, where to go to the cafeteria, that is really a lot of confusion. To me, that's very confusing. So that's my reasoning. And but just think of the, let me see. Think of when they have to do the middle school. Where are you going to put the students if you're going to rebuild a middle school? Where are you going to put the students? There's no place to put a student. So, but I'm fully against the modules. Thank you.
It's on. Just to try to be ready for February 3rd, I went through the packet. It's really wonderful, the answers that you told me that would be presented. It all is very sensible. It is common sense, the thing that sometimes we don't have. I know that people have asked me, could we get an idea of the enrollment for each one of the schools and, the grade levels and all that? Because when you redistrict, you're going to have...
Yeah, so since I've been here, the Finance Committee and the town meeting actually, if you look at last year's, you'll see the actual enrollment by grade level, by school. It's actually in our presentation that goes to Finance and then is printed for town meeting. But I'm happy, I provide the school committee a copy of that every month. I'm happy to do it.
That may, I think that's probably going to come up on February 3rd. The other main question was, you were thrown into this dilemma with the hotels and the transportation costs and everything, and here you go. What are you going to do? And you have no choice. But they wanted to know what the cost was.
The hotel enrollment situation with Stoughton Public Schools as it pertains to this project is null and void. It's dead on arrival. It didn't happen because everything with that came afterwards. Here's what I will tell you. Our current enrollment for our shelter hotel situation is declining every day. That's a positive. If you watched, I believe, school committee members can support me on this, the last school committee, I mentioned, here's the concern. As our shelter students leave and find permanent housing, there's a potential charge for the rest of the year that I have to split 50% of the transportation costs for those students. That's a bill, that's not budgeted. And two, there's a very big concern that the shelters will become homeless centers. Those are different, right? Shelters was a state entity movement because we had these students and families move in. Homelessness is literally a definition that a student who's unforgiving situation, their home goes up in fire or they're kicked out and so of it, that's where they go. There is zero money back to the town's school budget or town budget for that versus the 104 that we've received until this December. By the way, we don't know that we're getting that money from January till June this year.
And I know that's where the politics came in, that, you know, Tom Calder told me that those hotels never even applied to be hotels. They knew this all was going to transpire. And that's capitalism is. They look at the cash flow, and that's what it ended up being.
A lot of money.
Thank you so much, Jim.
Thank you, John Sagnoni, Precinct 4. TJ, just to reiterate something that you had probably brought up during the presentation is the average house being $300 is going to be the fee or the yearly thing. That's fixed for the 30 years, right? It's not going to go up as the value of the houses go up,
No,
correct?
it's actually fixed, and it's also an estimate because we don't borrow in one lump sum. We borrow in tranches throughout the project. So, but yeah, it's fixed over, and I confirmed all this with the town manager.
Yeah, I just want to make sure the
Yeah.
residents realize that, as
Right.
you had indicated, the schools help the values, increase. Your bill for the school building itself
Will
is
not increase. That's
be
right.
increasing
That's
equally.
right.
So thank you very much, and thank you to the committee and everybody's work. I'm
Thanks, John.
supporting this.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
If there's no other questions, Peter's sneaking around to another mic. Thank you all for coming tonight. Appreciate it. If you have any questions, please go to the website, which is no longer on there, stoughtonschools.org. Also, voteyesstoughton.com. I know I mentioned that earlier. That's a separate group, but I know they have a ton of information also. If you're looking for information, that we're not affiliated with the group, but they certainly do have a wealth of information on their page as well. Social media, the Stoughton Schools, social media, Facebook page, and I think all sorts of, I'm not involved in all social media, but there's information out there. And of course, New Elementary School at stoughtonschools.org. If you email, you'll get a direct answer within a day. Thank you all for coming.